Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you're doing well. This Sunday, December 10th, 2023. We meet today to talk about BULLRUN, to talk about narrative. I'm going to answer the question how to find a narrative, how to benefit from a narrative during a bull run. And you'll see, it's not that complicated. You just have to understand the fundamentals to then move forward. The fundamentals of the narrative, not the fundamentals of the cryptos we want to buy. You'll see, it's quite simple, especially when you're in a bull run and it starts straight away. If you want to train and really enjoy bull running, it's simple. There is perfect, complete free training available. It's through an educational journey that teaches you everything about blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, and trading. All this for free in comments and descriptions. You have exercises, multiple choice questions, modules, videos, guides, everything to support you in your progress. I spoke to you several times about narratives. We did the narrative on artificial intelligence. We did the narrative on the RWA. We did many other narratives systematically to return to what could precisely be the trigger of a bull run. We must also understand that during a bull run, what are narratives? These are cryptos which are under a theme which will appreciate in an impressive way. And there, we have several typologies of narratives. We are not going to talk about a narrative to speak, but we are going to use the narratives that I have already explained to you as examples. And it will be interesting to see the typology of narrative. First of all, we must remove a narrative that is separate, which is the speculative narrative. And that is a narrative in which there is no logic in it, but it happens. We end up with market explosions, and the best example that I have to present to you is Mana. So Mana, for those who don't know, it's the crypto of Decentraland, a game that is pseudo-etaverse, online. Okay, it's a browser game. Okay, there is no really graphic engine on it. And it totally exploded in 2021 with, in particular, this monumental acceleration. And that's not the narrative of gaming that came in. It's not the narrative of NFTs. It's not the narrative of Layer 1, of Layer 2. It's nothing other than just the name change from Facebook. In Meta, with precisely the rise of an ultra-speculative narrative, which is the metaverse. And everything that was even remotely related to the metaverse completely exploded. And when we say exploded, it's in a few weeks or even a few days. We took 600, 700, 1,000 for some just in a few hours. It's really impressive to see this type of narrative. And these are narratives in which there are no concrete elements. We must understand that it is just a trigger which will lead to a bullish acceleration and a form of general FOMO which is carried by the bull run. Because bull running is also that, it's actually the place for FOMO. And this is where, in fact, all human psychology will come into play. And this is where in speculative narratives, in fact, there is no need to really look for something fundamental because in all the case, it is a narrative which will push upwards, that this, whether interesting or not, and whether crypto is of interest or not. Understand that Decentraland, currently there are almost no players. Even at that time, there were quite few real players, and we had the Mana token, which was completely snatched away. Even though we are still very far away of the real representation of a metaverse, we are very far from what the future of the metaverse is. So in terms of general ideas, we had a valuation which was focused just on a change, by name and not on what Mana stood for or what Decentraland stood for. And that is very important because we will have ultra-speculative narratives which will be triggered during a bull run period and which is completely normal. And the advantage there is that we will have to spot them quickly and get into position directly. And once again, we will have to pay attention to something else when getting into position. It's not leveraging X10 directly thinking that it will work. Understand that it's not because we have a big green candle like that on a weekly basis that it happened that way. Imagine that there was a lot of liquidation. There were a lot of accelerations that were on the spot like that to be able to go up, and then we had big accelerations downhill, re-accelerations, and so on. There were liquidations all over the place. The best way to benefit from this narrative typology is systematically either in spot or behind in X1, X2, or even why not in GridBot if you are ever interested in this type of strategy. But there is no basis for these narratives. We must understand that it is something which will be born from nothing, and which will explode in less than 24 hours, and then continue for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even potentially 4 weeks. We can clearly see that we are in the first phase of the week, a lateralization, second acceleration, And this is always the case. We always have a sequencing of accelerations, and that's why it's important to be aware to prepare. Second thing and second typology of narrative. Here we are going to talk about a narrative which I have presented to you several times, which is the RWA, the real-world asset. I invite you to watch the video that I made on it. I will put it at the end of the video, or I will put it at the top right of your choice if you are interested. But in any case, it is a narrative which is very important, which is the tokenization of real assets. So we use crypto to transpose a real asset into a digital counterpart. And here what is interesting is that the CEO of Templeton explains that it is really tokenization, security under steroids. Securitization is in fact passing under a transferable security. This is what the SEC regulates. And then you begin to understand a little bit what is happening. Two things. Yes, we know that RWA is extremely important for finance. And not only that, this is important for everything that involves tokenization and exchange of physical assets, which actually cost in the transposition. Whether it is real estate, it greatly limits the costs. It limits the notary fees. It limits transaction costs. It is excessively liquid. In any case, we add liquidity to an asset on this. And that's what tells us, quite simply, and that's true. We know that it's being implemented. We know that we have a lot of blockchains that are instantiated in the groups to set up information transits and monetary transits and asset transits. Certainly we will have assets, therefore ETFs, for example, which will be, without us knowing it, set up on a blockchain to facilitate transactions. And I think we are going to have solutions that will be built around that. On the other hand, what will be the place of RWA cryptos in these ecosystems? What will be the crypto valuation of an RWA in it? If we take the example of Maple, because I like Maple, so it's a project that I have already talked about when we discussed RWA, but how will this token be valued in relation to that? Is there a relationship between the two? I want to tell you that this is a real narrative of technological evolution, but is it a narrative of structural investment? Technically, I want to tell you no. However, I am sure that when we really arrive at a phase of altcoin season, because we will get there at some point, for me we have a BTC which is having a little difficulty because as a result we have a dominance which is being swallowed and which I think we will not necessarily have a big alt season, at least before really having the real phase of acceleration and FOMO of the bull run. But we have a small alt season which allows you to train, as seen here, a total 3 on. We can clearly see that we have an upward acceleration. So we actually have valuations which are arriving on assets which do not necessarily have an interest in this valuation. Maple. Currently the token has no use. And we must understand that behind this valuation is just speculative. And so it's not because we have a narrative that is technically interesting that it will necessarily be valued behind it. It is imperative that we have a part of hyper-speculation that is put in place to be able to follow. And to go even further, for me, artificial intelligence is the same representation of artificial intelligence and blockchain. There are very few projects that manage to truly combine the two, and in any case, even those that manage to combine them will always lag behind centralized solutions which are more accessible, easier, less expensive, and thus, right now. So obviously we have an interest, yes, but it is ultimately really minimal compared to the value that artificial intelligence could have in a centralized solution. And for me, artificial intelligence on the blockchain is below the real valuation of RWA technology, therefore tokenization. On the other hand, behind it, it is something which is much more hyped and in which we have a real instantiation of a form of hyper-speculation that we sees it coming. And that's really important because we've had hyper-speculation since 2023, since the arrival of other GPT cats, at the end of 2022, since the arrival of other GPT cats in the collective consciousness. And that precisely we have behind people who really think that artificial intelligence, no matter where it is and how it will inevitably be successful. And so when we actually have this idea, it means that we will have hyper-speculation. Whether it is ultimately false or true, the fact remains that in a bull run, it means that we will have hypervaluation. That means that we will have curves that will resemble mana, quite simply. We must understand that this is something that will happen, and we will see it trigger directly. We will have to react quickly. You have in the description and comments the possibility of downloading my strategy guide on investment and trading in cryptocurrency, in which there are 30 pages to know everything about how to proceed, how to benefit from this bull run. And in addition, In description and comment, you also have the possibility of having access to our newsletter, which is available and which will be available every month. The links are in comments and descriptions. And so, in your narrative, you have to understand that there are narratives that currently exist. You have to ask yourself the question, are they valued, valorizable, and are they precisely going to be the narratives of the next bull runs? Is there going to be hyper-speculation? Certainly yes. But suddenly, you're going to ask me the question, and you are absolutely right. But what is the real narrative that will really take off, in which we know that we will have value? Simple. The narrative that will be used. If we take a step back and we project ourselves onto this bullish acceleration that we had at the beginning of 2021 and at the end of 2021, very interesting to see that we had a first wave which was pushed really by the lone saturation of Ethereum by decentralized finance. So first narrative, decentralized finance. Second narrative, the Ethereum killers, therefore the layer 1 blockchain infrastructure. Both were used. Decentralized finance was used. We had enormous transaction volume on even just PancakeSwap or Uniswap. Understand that it had a strong appeal. People came to use. And that's what this narrative was nourished by. And that's why we had an upward acceleration, which happened in several stages. For some, if we take the example of Solana, I must have a Solana lying around here somewhere, that we take a little step back, you will see that in fact, Solana, we did have this double wave, really very strong acceleration, where we had first wave, second wave. So first phase of acceptance, second phase of acceptance. Remember what I talked to you about with Mana? First phase, second phase of acceptance, and the second phase this time was much bigger. And precisely, it is this type of narrative that we will have to look for in 2024 and 2025 for the next bull run, for the bull run which is currently being prepared. And precisely, we will need used narratives. And again, another narrative that has worked very well is NFTs. NFTs were excessively used. We had a lot of volume on NFTs. We also had a use for NFTs, because before being images of monkeys, we must not forget that it is a smart contract, which has a functionality which is extraordinary, which is non-fungible, which is something that we did not know before in the blockchain, and which has made it possible, which in fact allows us to instantiate a form of uniqueness on digital, something which is basically supposed to be impossible. This is the end of the C8RL cockturl in the number part. So it's really important to understand that, and to understand that what we're going to have to look for mainly is the narratives that are going to be used in which the tokens will have a utility and in which there will be speculation that will take place. And that's where, in fact, we'll find the best narratives. That doesn't mean that other narratives won't work. As I told you, we can have very strong accelerations, but nevertheless, the narratives in which we will drag the most and in which we will manage to make the most multipliers will be in these narratives. And that is what will be important to detect. And this is what is important to detect now, because we already have evidence of certain narratives that meet all of these elements. And I'll save that for another video. In any case, I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment, because one supports the channel, it favors the algorithm, and then above all, it makes me very happy. And I wish you a very good end of Sunday, and we will see you again on Monday for the daily, in which we will review the news, because there is a lot of news that has fallen on Binance. We'll come back to this tomorrow, 7.